Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of the World of Brickfilms podcast. I'm your host, William of AW Studios. And joining me again is Sean Willis of City Penta.
Hello again.
Yeah, unfortunately, Raphael couldn't make it again. His phone is broken, so he had to head over to get it fixed. City Penta's joining me again. But joining us today is Trevor of SuitedNinjaNerd. How you doing? All right?
I'm doing great. Yeah, ready to talk about Brickfilms.
So you started brick filming in 2016, is that right?
There's a bit more history to it than that. I actually started back in 2011. There was this camp that a local community college was running, and it was like how to do Lego stop motion. So it was a week-long camp, and me and one of my friends did it, and we made this animation that I still actually have. I've contemplated posting it on YouTube, but I've kind of decided against that just because it's pretty crappy. But yeah, and it's a funny story about that too. Actually, is there was a picture they took of us while we were at the event, and they've used it on the brochure for that camp ever since. So every year in the mail, we always just get this picture of me from like 6-7 years ago. But yeah, and from then I kind of did some stuff with like an old iPod I had, but I didn't start like actually posting things to YouTube until 2016. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same. I've got like loads of brick films that I've like never released, but again, I sort of like rewatch them and I kind of just think, yeah, that I'm not going to release them.
yeah, it would be really interesting to see how people reacted to it, but yeah.
So, when were you watching Brickfilms first regularly?
Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, it was probably around 2011, if not earlier. And I think I've mentioned this before on the Frame 100 podcast, but I think the first animator that I had like ever discovered and like knew about was Mini Life TV. I think there was this old like brick filming website I used to go to. It wasn't like brickfilms.com or anything. I can't remember the name of the website. It completely escapes me. But I would watch like this one video, and then like they had the autoplay feature on there, so you could like click on different videos to watch from there. And I would keep going, and eventually I like found this one video that really interested me. And as it turns out, it was the second episode of the Mini Life TV series. And so like a couple more years go by, and I had like actually discovered them and subscribed to them. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, all these years ago, I was like already watching you guys. So that was definitely an interesting discovery. But
Yeah. So have you got a couple of projects you are sort of working on? Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, so right now for the summer, I have one project in particular planned out. I made an announcement video about it and like an update thing that I posted a couple weeks ago. I'm working on making this film called Torment, which is this bullying awareness film, and it's about this kid who goes through all these different experiences with another bully, and eventually there's like a student in his class that decides to step up for him, and they kind of end up having a new friendship between the two of them. So I'm currently in the process. I haven't produced any animation for it yet. I'm hoping to start animation really soon. But I've been trying to reach out to a bunch of different like organizations and companies and stuff that have these anti-bullying initiatives, to hopefully see if one of them can potentially like sponsor or partner with me on the product, on the film. So yeah, I still have yet to hear from any of them, but hopefully I'll get some notices about that stuff soon.
And is that for a class project or a contest or something? Does it have a deadline?
No, there's no deadline on it. I have thought like even if reaching out to another company didn't work out, I could potentially enter it into like some anti-bullying contests if need be. But like if none of those work out, it'll just be put up onto my channel as just a regular old video. But yeah, and then from there, I don't really have any other plans for the rest of the year. I know I definitely want to do a Christmas special edition of the My Unluckiest Life series, which is a series I run on my channel. But other than that, I really have no plans for the most part. Just kind of winging it from here on.
So there in My Unluckiest Life episode 5, you did quite a few motion blur effects. How hard was it to kind of time that to get it right?
Oh, geez. Well, a lot of them weren't that hard. It's a technique that I had been wanting to use in other videos. I can't remember if I did actually in any of the others. I might have, but it seemed like it was going to be the best thing to do for the type of video that episode 5 was. There was one, I think it's the one where it's the really quick pan between him being on that Alex being on that blue sled and it like hitting into a rock and him flinging off. Because I think what I had to do is I actually ran out of poster board in the background, and I needed like one more image of the motion blur. So I had to get like another piece of poster board and like post it up next to it. So it looks a little off. You can probably actually see the frame in the video. But yeah, I mean, other than that, the blurred stuff was pretty easy to do for the most part.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you actually do a couple of different types of motion blur, because you've got the actual physical moving objects quickly as you sort of take the frame, but you also do brick built motion blur as well. And I noticed on your behind the scenes video you're talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, of course, that was all inspired by like the Lego movie, Lego Ninjago movie, Lego Batman movie. Because yeah, it's interesting how like they were the ones to kind of like, I guess you could say, pioneer that technique before us, who like actually do that stuff for a living, quote unquote. But yeah, and I remember even with there's the one shot at the end where everything's like spinning. So you see like Percy, and he's holding like that little bill for like the $100 for the damage report or whatever. That I simply just had like a Lazy Susan spinning platform thing, and that shot took a good long while to put that together, to be honest.
So who would you say are your biggest inspirations when it comes to the films you make? Because I sort of noticed, I feel like in a way that My Unluckiest Life series reminds me a little bit of Stranger Than Fishing by Mind Game. I don't know if that's one of the inspirations.
Actually, no. Zach Macias, I do love his stuff. I definitely look up to him and his animations, but I actually hadn't seen that video until not recently, but it was within the past year. So I had never seen it before planning out any of the My Unluckiest Life stuff. But again, going back to Mini Life TV, they were definitely a big inspiration for it. And uncoincidentally, like my two title characters from My Unluckiest Life, Alex and Percy. Alex actually shares the same exact hairpiece as Chris, and Percy shares the same headpiece as Ian. So that was just like a really weird coincidence. Like that was even still before I had like quote unquote discovered them. So those were just like two creative coincidences that I didn't even realize till like a good bit into the future. But other than Mini Life TV, gosh, I mean, there's just like really it's just any brick filmer that I've come across has truly been an inspiration to me. Definitely Rio Force. He's been a big inspiration because just because of his like really wacky out of the blue sort of humor and style. So
is there anything in particular that was an influence on making it less dialogue based than Mini Life TV?
Not really, besides just making videos easier to put out. just because syncing dialogue with animation movements is pretty challenging when you're not syncing them together through Dragon Frame. But yeah, other than that, I mean, there's really no reason behind it. I mean, with episode 5 in particular, I did want it to be in kind of a genre of its own compared to the others, because with each video, I really do try to practice like a different technique or a different style of my filming, just to really influence new shooting styles and just to kind of always keep things fresh. So, I mean, besides that, there really was no other influence besides making it less dialogue based.
Yeah, I would agree that episode 5 is its own thing. It's really a standout
Yeah.
among the series, and also just Brickfilms in general in recent times.
Many people have been telling me it's my new magnum opus, and it's pretty humbling to hear that, to be honest.
For now, at least.
I think it's probably, one of my favorite brick films this year so far, easily. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I really like is, again, I always talk about it a lot, but musical accompaniment. And I really love how the music, the classical music, flows with what's going on. And again, I just think classical music just goes so well with, like, comedy brick films and that kind of thing. Yeah.
It really does. Yeah. And like with that, before hopping into production of episode 5, I just was kind of like, okay, I know I want to use classical music, so I went ahead and I found like 3 or 4 different songs, and then I went and did all the shooting for it, and it was just really coincidental that things happened to match up as well as they did when I was putting everything together in post. And I was really happy that things actually did match up as well as they did, because otherwise I think the video would have been pretty all over the place.
Yeah. Well, I've recently, in the film I'm doing right now, out on episode 5, I use a classical piece during an action sequence, and yeah, I just think it's just a fun way of, like, you're using classical music, with films. It is really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what would you say is the most challenging thing you've ever done when it comes to animation?
Oh, geez. I think throwing it back to the first video I ever did, the My Unlucky Life episode 1, the scene where that motorcycle has to break through the wall, that was a really challenging one, because I remember I did not build the wall to necessarily come apart easy or anything. And I had also not gotten a battery pack to go into my camera by then, so I had a limited amount of battery life. So I was even on a bit of a timer for that. So I was on the clock trying to put that together, and it was just a really challenging one to do because of how many different things were going on in the scene. I mean, that's probably the most challenging thing I've ever had to do. Either that or just some of the motion blur shots from my Ripped Away film, because with those it was making sure that things moved consistently between frames, and making sure that lighting was consistent, and just making sure that everything looked good was a bit more on the challenging side.
Yeah, I mean, I've come across the sort of case quite a lot where I've built something and it's not designed to be put apart easily. And that's always really a pain. You're trying to show different angles or anything like that. Quite often I'll build a room where it's designed like you actually would build a room,
Yeah, I do that a lot too, where I build things like you would actually want to build them structurally, because I used to make a lot of mocks back in the day. And since then, I've kind of learned that not to take my fascination in set design to, I guess you could say, practical terms. So now it's whenever I build rooms, I always put them on jumpers so that they're easy to pull off walls from the floor and stuff like that. And I'm a lot more conscious of my set design and making sure that it actually functions well with my animation flow.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even really think about it too much until I was talking to Trick in the podcast a couple of episodes ago, because he
Mm-hmm.
was saying that he always designs it so that you can easily pull apart the sets to do different angles and stuff. And now what I do is with the wall, I'll just like make it so that each side of a wall is sort of not attached, and I'll just attach it with one brick at the top.
Yeah, I do the same.
Yeah, it's a more practical way of doing it because it's easier to put it apart and rearrange it. And yeah,
It's kind of funny because when I joined, everyone knew to do that. Like I don't remember ever seeing anyone not doing that. So I don't know. Maybe people don't really say it anymore. Maybe it became so commonplace that everyone forgot to mention it to new people.
yeah. I think people are so used to seeing like these impressive mocks and different things that they kind of want to replicate that kind of thing, and they
Mm-hmm.
forget, like you were saying a minute ago, you forget to really look at the practical side of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely learned a lot since starting because I'm a lot more conscious of how much time things are going to take. And I've kind of gotten into a motion where I don't really want to spend as much time on set building because I know that the more time I waste on that, the less time I have to animate or the more delayed animation becomes. So it's also really hard to find a balance between what to spend more time doing and what to spend less time doing. But I think I've started to figure out a sufficient way to at least have a better workflow of things.
Yeah. So, let's see, in the previous episode, we did actually we talked a little bit about B-movie brick films, and I thought a good sort of continuation on that theme would be to talk a little bit about the sort of, I suppose you'd call them like high concept brick films. Basically, it's these sort of films that production values and that kind of stuff are sort of more important than the kind of actual story side of things. So basically, you've got films like I'm sure that we've all talked about like Michael Hickox, in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and basically there are quite a lot that that are like him, and they're kind of varying sort of degrees of quality. And I know a lot of people do criticize his stuff, but I think it's not really the stories, because you can do some amazing things with stories that are similar to that. Okay, one of the examples I think is it Pantsahat, is he called?
Pantsahat,
Because he
yes.
makes some. I mean, I think his stories are almost as simplistic as something that Michael Hickox would do, but they're just so engaging and just sort of fun to watch that it kind of it's just like a whole new level, from that kind of thing. And yeah, so what do you what are your guys' sort of opinion on that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, for me, like Michael Hickox definitely like was always an early inspiration to me, but yeah, now it just feels like his animation is lacking so much that it makes me care less, even if he's trying to like really incorporate a story. The way that I've written My Unluckiest Life and how the episodes work is they really are more sort of in that realm where like they're each kind of this disjointed, random little story that I'm trying to tell. Um, and I sort of associate that again with Mini Life TV and how their structure was back in the early days. But now they've grown to a point where everything, like every episode that precedes the next, is like in a story-driven style. And I do want to eventually reach a point where not necessarily every episode is story-driven, but at least episodes start to like connect with one another, and the effects of one episode start to cause other effects to others. Um, but yeah, like, and again with Pantsahat, like again, he's one of my favorite animators in recent years, just because the stories are like super lacking, but the way that everything is animated, and I think even the comedic aspect of it, it just engrosses me so much and makes me want to try and, if there's not a story there, make one for him basically. And I think there's just like a little bit of a magical thing to that. It's really cool. But then with all these other like Michael Hickox clones, like another one that I've seen recently is FK Films. I used to like his stuff a lot, but now it's like everything is it's like the sound files that he uses start to annoy me. Like, I noticed that the sound file he uses for the walking for minifigures, it doesn't actually sync up with the footsteps that the minifigs make, and that just starts to kind of drive me insane.
One of the things that annoys me is the same sound effects over and over again. You just hear like in every film of his.
Yeah, they just get reused over and over and over again and recycled all the time.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, like, when it comes to like Michael Hickox, I wouldn't necessarily say that his stuff is bad, but you look at something that he did in 2009, and you look at something from like now, and I don't really think enough has really changed. And that's really the problem. He's never really sort of challenges himself to try new things.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like, in the early days, I think there was a lot of potential for him to grow as an animator. I think a lot of his early stuff, I'd say, has actually, you know, got like potential. Like the pizza delivery film is kind of funny, but it just doesn't. You know, if you're just gonna make it again and again, it's not gonna be funny anymore.
It's gonna tire people out.
And I think it's the same kind of like the way that everything's static and everything like looks the same. You're sort of looking at that same sort of distance from the figures, and you know, it gets to that point where, you know, like you're not looking, you don't feel like you're there. You feel like you're just watching some Lego figures move around, and there's that sort of disconnect.
Oh, yeah, I think that Michael Hickox's animation in particular is very robotic. It's like the characters, there's like a lot of walking and running, and they just kind of run with their arms straight forward and straight back, and there's not really much like life.
Yeah, there's no dynamic motion to any.
I really haven't watched a lot of Michael Hickox, because I mean I was always turned off by the, you know, sort of basic titles and thumbnails and the little amounts that I did see, which I mean, yeah, I completely understand why they get as popular as they do and who they're for, and they're just not targeted towards me, and that's fine. But then when I saw other people, like I saw these Hickox clones and they're related, and I thought, oh, that's gonna be boring to me. But then I started watching people like Pantsahat and Jurassic Brick Productions recently is one who got posted in the Discord, who I was surprised by, and I was, you know, really surprised to see that they were like sort of like leagues above the stuff that I have seen by Michael Hickox or like some of the other big ones. You know, like Pantsahat has got a lot of fun scenarios, and Jurassic Brick Productions has got incredibly great animation. There's just a lot more fun and life to the visuals of their films, even if the stories are obviously kept basic for a wider audience.
The thing is, like, the way I look at it is that basically the stories that, you know, in Michael Hickox films are cartoons, and people like Pantsahat, they know they animate it in a cartoony way.
Yeah, a cartoon has to be cartoony.
Mm-hmm.
And his stuff doesn't look like a cartoon. It just looks, you know, all robotic. It doesn't, and that's the problem. I think it's not done in a way that's fun, or, you know, the way that the stories are. You know, it
just kind of gets by on the fact that Lego is moving.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's enough for his audience. Obviously, we're like, as Lego animators, we're gonna be pretty picky about that.
Of course, that's the thing. I mean, he's only doing what his audience want him to do, and basically he's not like he wouldn't sort of regard himself as a filmmaker in the same way that a lot of the kind of people in the community think. He's really an animator who has a big YouTube channel, so it's not really kind of the same thing, is it, at all? But yeah, I think another one that I kind of have mixed opinions about is Alex Planet. I don't know if either of you have seen his stuff.
I have heard of him, actually. I actually do kind of like his stuff. It has started to get to the point where it's like, now that he's having like different parts to things and kind of like continuing stories, you can kind of see like, oh, well, that video was popular, so of course he's going to try and make a follow-up to it. Which, granted, I mean, most people would do that anyway. But it's like, there's not enough like new stuff to it, really, that it becomes basically redoing the same thing over again, but like with just a tiny little tweak here and there.
I think the quality of his films really does vary from film to film, because there's one that I actually really love and I've watched like several times now. The train heist one. And I think it's probably one of his most popular films. And it's just so, I think the sets, the just the way it's animated and the kind of techniques are so sort of creative and fun. But then other ones, like some of his recent stuff, feels more like that kind of Michael Hickox sort of feel. So I don't know. I think his is kind of mixed. Some are really good and some are just sort of like okay.
Did he do? I think I know the train heist film you're talking about, but I'm not sure if he made that or not. I mean, I'm actually not really familiar with the guy you're talking about. I just kind of know the name, but again, I would have ignored it because of the just kind of uninteresting to me qualities.
I think it's that one where they've got like counterfeit money and they're sort of shipping it over on a train.
Oh, you know what? I think you may have that mixed up with Alexander Studios.
Oh,
yeah,
that's the person I've been talking about.
Okay, because Alex's Planet, yeah, his stuff, it's like he does parts to things, and like his main draw, the stuff on his channel that has like millions upon millions of views, are all these like Prison Break related videos, and they use like frame blending. Yeah, his stuff I'm personally not that interested in, but Alexander Studios, I do like a good bit of his stuff. There was a film he just released. I think it was within a couple days ago. It was Lego Prison Break, and it was a bit more of a departure from the stuff he's done much more recently. It still features like the father and son character from his other videos, but it's in a slightly different way. It doesn't really focus on them the whole entire time. It focuses more on like the crooks in the story. And with that one, it's weird because it feels like he animated it like slightly more rigidly, and I kind of prefer that actually. It's bizarre.
I think what I find interesting about Michael Hickox, going back to him, is that he did that film Chainsaw Massacre, and
Oh, yeah.
and
I love this one.
he said that it was kind of like he was experimenting.
He wanted to do something unusual for him.
Yeah.
But it seems like the reaction was so bad that he's never tried anything like that since.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it says like in the early days he was kind of willing to experiment, and I think he sort of gradually got to know his audience.
Yeah, it seems like he had some spark of inspiration there, but it seems like making films for his audience kind of overruled that.
Yeah, that flame has sort of been extinguished from his
Because
craft.
I just love the comment section of his Chainsaw Massacre video. It's the funniest thing in the world. But I wanted to go back to you mentioned him making films for his audience, and that you could look at something that he made in 2009 or 2010 and now, and it hasn't really changed like quality wise. And I think that it kind of goes to show, like, when you're not involved in the community and there's no real pressure there from other filmmakers, and you're not sort of subject to the expectations of the other filmmakers and their advice as well in chat rooms or anything like that, it shows.
Mm-hmm.
It's understandable that the quality hasn't really changed all that much.
See, and it's also interesting because it's like some people do it because because they're tailoring to their audience. They know what they want, how they want it. But then sometimes people do it because they just aren't willing to change. And it's interesting where, like, since they don't do that, they have such a, like, distinguished style to everything that, like, if you saw one of their older films compared to, like, one of their more recent films, you'd kind of be able to figure out, like, oh, yeah, like, I remember their stuff because they do everything, like, in this sort of style. So it's, like, it's kind of this bizarre thing where, like, it can both help and hurt ways that animators sort of develop over time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones that who's quite interesting because, again, similar kind of films, but he was active within the Brickfilm community, so definitely had that influence. Was Hamster Productions, and his stuff is really interesting because it's set in a setting, like a time. Like I think my favorite one is the one in London, and it's London in 1950s, and they're stealing they're sort of robbing a bank, and again, it's a very simple story, but it's done in such a fun way. Again, another one was his gangster film. That's set in is it Chicago in the 30s? Again, it's another one that is a very simple story, but you just do it the right way, it can be fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like his stuff. Kind of bummed that we haven't seen anything from him recently, but
yeah, well, I think I don't know if he's actually sort of stopped animating. Actually, I'm not sure, but yeah.
But on that note, I think it actually if Michael Hickox was to sort of put in an effort to improve his animation, it could end up harming him in the long run because it would take longer to make all the films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you have to like actually make money off of brick filming, then if you can manage to do that with a pretty easy animation, then yeah, it's a good route for a career.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's that whole thing of if he was to do that, his audience wouldn't be expecting it, and a lot of people would feel like he's not that Michael Hickox that they grew up with and enjoy.
Honestly, I don't think they'd notice.
Maybe not actually. Yeah.
I mean, that's not like meant to be an insult or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. Like, it'd be, I don't know. I'd like to see if he maybe even just tried it and see what happens from there.
It's just we're the kind of people who think about the animation itself, so we'd be the ones to notice. But at the same time, we're not the target audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so Penta, before we head over to the Brickfilm Showcase, is there any questions you'd like to ask?
I suppose I might as well ask, any plans to enter the Bricks in Motion Summer Contest or Brawl?
Well, I assumed that question was coming. For Brawl, no. I really want to do Brawl this year, but of course, people decided to vote on the week that I was going to be away at a camp. Luckily, at that camp, I'll still be animating. I just won't have any access to Lego, of course. So I'm not going to be able to enter Brawl. The summer contest, I would also like to enter that one. It's really just going to depend on how long it takes me to finish Torment. I mean, heck, I could even, I guess, enter that into the contest, although I don't really think it would fit the film or the theme very well.
Well, you could make it fit the theme depending on how you film it.
Very true, yeah. Yeah, so stuff to think about, but I'm hoping to finish Torment, and then even if it's something small, I could still enter that into the contest.
I think that you would be a great fit for the contest theme because, of all the creative things that were done in My Unluckiest Life episode 5, that would have fit the contest quite well, I think, actually.
Yeah, I did enter that into the Brickworld Chicago Film Festival, and it was super coincidental how their theme happened to be seasons, and I made this one that was all about the winter time. And so that was hopefully that film does well in that film festival, but we'll see.
When is that actually? Is that
it happens. I entered it in, and I think around Father's Day weekend, which is in like 2 or 3 weeks. They will announce, that's when Brickworld is actually going on, so people will be able to vote and stuff then. So
yeah,
hopefully it does well.
Well, thank you for reminding me, because I actually want to submit one of my films into that. I actually forgot, but yeah. But
yeah, I think you still have a couple more days, so you should be good.
But yeah, I mean, as for me, I've never actually participated in Brawl, but I want to make this year the first. Partly because it's the 10th anniversary, it's really special. But I mean, I haven't really confirmed it yet, but it seems very likely that I'll be doing a collaboration with two other brick filmers. If so, it'd be really good. I'd look forward to that. But yeah, I hope it sort of goes through. But yeah, the summer contest I definitely want to take part in, because I just always do, and it's my favourite contest. I know I am sort of thinking of possibly submitting the filmmaking right now, because there's a lot of practical effects in that. But I don't know. I like to make film specifically for it, so we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we head over to the Brickfilm Showcase then.
I'm down.
So my pick is Robota, and it's a 2005 film by Marc Buteau, I think he's called. Basically, it's set in a futuristic world populated by robots, and it revolves around this one robot with a built-in wheelchair, and it's basically about him trying to come up with the money to buy some parts so that he can walk again. It's quite a large-scale film, as all the robots are big brick-built puppets, which makes it very distinctive-looking brick film. It's one of those films that you can take a frame from, and instantly it's you can identify it as being Robota. It's also definitely stood the test of time. I think the animation and the visuals, everything has really kind of, it's aged really well. I think just everything about this is just so unique and interesting, and I really love it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Robota is one of the first films that I'd go to as a undisputed all-time classic, best brick films of all time contender, and its scale is unrivaled for brick filming. Really, it's the kind of film where it's like if you can think it, it is done in the film. It's like it just completely ignores the limitations of having to film it with Lego. I'm sure a lot of people would like the idea of portraying a massive living city, but they just think, oh, it needs too much space, needs too much Lego, needs too much lighting, needs too much camera movement. But it's all there in Robota. It's just, it's just what he wanted to do, and then he did it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm blown away by like just the scale of everything, and even like the lighting. Like the lighting is done. It's really, really good mood lighting throughout the film. And I even just love the whole like tone shift within the film, where like it starts out kind of like gritty and desolate, and then he like goes into that club where they're having like the robot bird fight, and the mood sort of like is lightened there, and then it basically just turns into like a comedy by the end of the film. But yeah, I mean, in the scale and everything too, it's. I wish I had enough space just to pull off something remotely close to that size. But all around, I mean, yeah, that's a film that definitely was an inspiration to me too. I mean, it was just one of the ones I think I just stumbled across somewhere, and it's very distinct. It's got its own style. There's really nothing out there that's like it, and it's really cool.
It ties in a lot with what we were talking about last week with Sloth about the establishing shots and also the city scale, like Akira or Ghost in the Shell. And there's a great establishing shot at the beginning, and then that like absolutely unbelievable shot where the camera pans down, and there's so many layers to the city, and there's of course the micro scale skyline in the background, which works really well as well.
So, Penta, what did you pick?
I picked Pokeballin 2 by Next Maniac, and I was thinking, I was trying to think about films that would fit the theme of the summer contest. That just kind of inspired me. I was just thinking about it in general, and I realised that Pokeballin 2 is quite an impressive one for techniques, and kind of deceptively simple in a way, but really effective and really well done. There's the impressive use of scale and different size models for the same characters in the same shots that are just masked in a blur or a very quick movement, and it's just done so smoothly. And it's pretty it's inspirational. I think a lot of people could take influence from that.
Yeah, and it's even impressive how like it's a Lego film done with a property that Lego doesn't even own, and it just works out so perfectly. I mean, that the dynamics of that film and how there's just so many different things going on in so many different scales, and like how he was able to accomplish every single shot within the film. It's done so well and so polished that like it's really hard to see. There's some films that like it don't even rival it. It's pretty crazy just how much detail is in it too, despite like how simplistic in style it is. And I always just love that thumbnail. Looking at it, it just looks so derpy.
It's a lot like a 2D animated film. It's almost as if
it really
everything
is. Yeah.
it's all drawn. It's like any shape he wants, any size he wants. It's like you were drawing where you just have it completely. It's just up to your mind, but it's all done with bricks.
Yeah, I'd
So
be really
that's an
interested to
impressive
see
element.
how much inspiration he actually had from like the Pokemon anime. Because I mean, there are a lot of shots in there where everything feels very flat, but it's like you can still see like it's bricks layered on top of bricks to create like certain effects and things. So it's this really cool mix of like 2D and 3D at the same time.
And actually, it's not just so much like 2D animation, but specifically it's like internet flash animation, old Newgrounds stuff. Is what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to know what his influences were making that film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's such an old one too. Like I'm trying to remember what year did that come out?
What, Pokeballin 2?
Yeah.
Well, 2014.
Okay.
I consider it recent.
Well, yeah. I mean, passage of time is probably a lot different compared to between you and I.
I mean, I consider it's just be like, oh yeah, that just came out last year or something. It's a few years
Yeah, I mean,
by now.
it's not that much older. Because also I don't even know what the time gap is between the first and the second one. I don't think it was that long though.
2 years.
2 years.
Actually,
wow.
is Pokeballin 2 the last project we've seen from Next that wasn't a commission?
I think it might be.
For Lego.
He hasn't really made that much, has he, in recent years?
Well, he has, but it's all on Lego's YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, I was because Dylan has not done anything within recent years, to be honest. At least for himself. I know there's a couple of films that he made for Lego that he posted on his own channel, but other than that, he hasn't done anything. I mean, one of my favorites from him is like Foster the People, Houdini. But just that with that one in general, just the effects in that one are crazy good.
Again, I think it's a bit like Robota in that it's a large-scale film, and I guess they go quite well together actually, because it's that kind of unconventional. You're not just going with the minifigures, and when you do those sort of large-scale stuff, I think, or again like Picanoimation, his stuff, it's they really have to kind of be very creative in how they animate things and how they build things and stuff, and it's some very interesting stuff. I think it's something that I mean, I'd have to get more Lego, I think, but it's something that I would like to go into because you're having to animate in such a different style to just the standard minifigure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can see there's a lot of inspiration in it too. I can see from like stuff that David Pagano has done too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Little Guys in Country Building.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one with the Pagano puppets.
So, Trevor, what was your pick?
So I was talking about him earlier, but I picked Lego Zombie Shopping by Pantsahat. It's one of his films. All of his stuff is like super quirky, but it's where this character of his is part of this zombie apocalypse, and he runs into another character, and they end up going into the shopping mall to try and find a cure, which just happens to be in Walmart, to help get rid of this like zombie menace that's swept across the nation. It's like the humor that he has throughout it is like really tongue in cheek, and it's super quirky and unique. And yeah, I mean, I think it was the first film of his that I had seen. And I mean, the fact that he was able to get me to watch that one and then get super engrossed in all of his older stuff, that definitely says something in terms of how just unique his craft is.
Again, I think because you were talking about him earlier, I just think it's just the way that he animates, the way that things are shot. It's just done in such a fun way, and it kind of really just sort of show you that you can have a very simple story and make it, fantastic, and I just think that's it really sort of goes against any argument to people going, oh, it's only a silly story. It doesn't have to be good, And I really do kind of commend people like Pantsahat who, do the best they can in the production values and everything like that, and just make something really just fun to watch. And even though it's a very it is actually a very essentially very simple story, but yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, I think he must, out of the Hickox-esque crowd, he must be the one that has the most appeal for the other brick filmers, like more serious brick filmers.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of great production values and a lot of interesting scenarios, and fun visuals.
Yeah, and it's like even his set design is like really, really good. Like everything is built out on a super big scope. Definitely not as big as like in like Robota, but it's relative to a minifigure, it's pretty large. The whole Walmart model. I mean, he's used that a couple times too, and it's interesting because like in a bunch of his films, he reuses a bunch of different things. Like it's very obvious what stuff he's like used before. But like since each of his films are like so disconnected from one another, they all seem like really unique in their own right. But he has like still used like the same character, like Jace Brickman, that he's used in a couple of his films. He appears in this as well. And it's like it's kind of that's the thing that I'm trying to achieve, is like having a disconnected story that's still connected by like certain elements of it. I don't know. It kind of creates this like sense of deja vu.
He's also more willing to have some more interesting lighting in the films. Usually these type of films are all extremely bright, vivid colors, very even, flat lighting across the entire set. So they're not particularly interested to look at. But especially with like the outside of the Walmart shot in this film, it's got it's later in the day, so it's darker, and there's light coming out of the Walmart. It's not all one light source.
Yeah, that's something I'm trying to learn to do with my films, is give them more dynamic lighting, because it's definitely more appealing to the eye to have different colors of light as opposed to having everything just be like evenly lit with like two soft boxes, which is what I've been doing for the past year or so. But I'm really trying to delve into using like different colored lights and things. And like with Torment, what I'm trying to do is have a big influence from the sun. So like every classroom and all the different locations in the film are always going to have like a window or something that will allow like light to flood in from the outside. And I'm hoping that that'll help with making the visuals look a lot more interesting. So
yeah, I think it does. Yeah, but at the same time, it seems like the more flat and colorful lighting, I guess it has a more general appeals to a more younger audience, I suppose. So that's why
it really does.
Hickox-esque people. But I would still say, even though he does put more life into the characters and does have a lot of fun things to look at in the films, I do think the animation, it's not quite there, because it's a bit floaty, and I don't think the weight isn't given enough consideration.
Yeah,
and I've thought this with some of his other films as well, and I don't know if he's gotten better in the most recent films. I know this one we're looking at now is over a year old at this stage, but especially in shots like in this film when the character jumps out the window near the start, or towards the end when the zombie cure is thrown for the first time, or also when the shelf is broken off, it's pretty slow. It doesn't have the right weight or impact.
Yeah,
so that would be something to consider.
It would be interesting to see. Like, I don't think he's ever really delved into doing anything with brick-built motion blur. So I could see that helping out a lot with that stuff.
Okay, so before we actually kind of wrap this up, is there anything that you'd like to do? Anything to say, before we kind of finish the episode?
No, I mean, not as far as I can say. I mean, just definitely be on the lookout for some more stuff coming from me. I've got plans, but at the same time I don't have plans, so it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's been great having you with us. I really admire your work. It's yeah, I mean, keep at it. I mean, yeah, for someone who's not really been, animating for that long, really, you really showing a lot of potential. And I mean, just that, your latest like Unlucky-ish Life films are just so good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, just keep at it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It was a lot of years of just sitting around wanting to brick film, but not having the equipment to do it. So that time instead got invested into watching other stuff and researching and figuring out how things with brick filming work. So that's definitely advice I would give to animators out there is just if you want to do it but you can't, don't waste that time sitting around and thinking about how much you would do with that time. Use it to your advantage and watch other films, look at behind the scenes of certain videos, and just try and research things that are definitely going to help you fix your craft. And once you can get to a point where your animation improves or you have equipment to animate with, it'll help a lot with you having your own distinct style and just kind of being a standout animator from the rest of other people.
So, Trevor, where can they find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on my YouTube channel at SuitedNinjaNerd Productions. I don't have any other social media that I'd like people to have access to. Hopefully, though, soon I'll be getting a Twitter. Still trying to work details out with that. But yeah, I mean, you could just find me on YouTube at SuitedNinjaNerd Productions.
Yeah, and Penta, where can they find you?
Yep, Silly Penta on YouTube or Twitter. But I just wanted to just touch on that as well. I like when there's a series in brick filming that is going to be good when you see a new one released. And I think that My Unlucky-ish Life has very quickly become one of the standout series of recent times.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to say that.
And you can find me on YouTube, IW Studios, and the same on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Been a pleasure talking to you as well. Thank you for having me.
Bye, guys, and keep brick filming.
Bye.
See ya.